Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you very much, Mark. Good afternoon. BALPA is British Airline Pilots Association, 9,000 members representing the best part of 80% of the pilot workforce. I really hesitate to use the word expert, so many of them in the room, but so I'll change and say I'm the main man for BALPA when it comes to baseball programs and welfare, and working for a long time, so hopefully we'll see. To summarise, I think where we are, hugely interesting morning. My perspective, actually, someone who's doing this on the front line. One, you can't screen psychologically pilots before they join or when they're actually working. Two, we don't enjoy the Air Force squadron mentality. My company has 4,000 pilots, and apparently, according to Di, it's very difficult to actually pick up mental health issues as someone flying with you never met. And thirdly, as Paul pointed out in that long list of pilot attributes, the thing he was probably too polite to mention is that, from my experience, pilots are the world's worst at asking for help. We're problem solvers, hugely autonomous, and absolutely will not say, help me. Put all that together, how on earth are we going to crack this one? Well, I'm delighted to say that it's taken a lot of work, but in a matter of weeks in British Airways, we're going to launch a programme which hopefully, you said there's some elements coming together, Mark, hopefully I'll show you what they are. Do I press it? Not that one. Which one? Which one? Next. No, we want to say next. Fly 380 across the world.
Do you want some help, Dave?
Thank you, Mark. I've been helping you for years. Okay, the BALPA welfare story, actually, like Slow Gin, has its roots in alcohol. Though it's interesting to say that by the end of it, that alcohol-related issues are actually quite a narrow part of what we've ended up doing. The fundamental weakness, of course, of any policy that's in place in an airline is self-referral. We've heard that word many times. Of course, as I've just said, pilots don't self-refer. They keep it to themselves. And my first exposure to this was when I became a rep, actually 20 years ago this month. I'm celebrating my anniversary on that one. And as a young rep, I was just listening to a story over the water coolers. And there was, one guy was explaining about one of the guys in his company, young co-pilot, 6 months in the company, was doing a domestic something or other. Early morning, so it'd be 6:30, and established in the cruise. And the captain leant across. He was a known alcoholic on the base. His nickname was Dr. White and Mr. Mackay. And he leant across and said, "Tell me honestly, Doctor," he said, "can you smell alcohol in my breath?" Now this lad's been in 6 months in the airline. What is he going to say at this point? What he actually needed was a telephone number that he could get on the ground, phone up and say, "You're not going to believe what's just happened." Tell the story, and someone to say, "Thank you very much, we'll take it from there." Hopefully this is where we're at 20 years later. I was actually, when I first started as a rep, given scheduling as a speciality, which I hated because I realised they're all freaks who deal with the world as black and white and have to have a rule for it. So I got out of there as soon as I could and got into disciplinaries because it suited my lifestyle much better. And actually disciplinaries is where this alcohol and some degree stress started to reappear, because it's that right at the very end of the process that someone with an issue ends up triggering either through absence management or through a disciplinary. And interestingly, stress, for example, sleepwalking is I've seen 2 cases of people who are extremely stressed who sleepwalk, and the symptoms of sleepwalking, the physicians who know, are often confused with alcoholism, certainly to untrained hotel staff. And they triggered the disciplinaries. Right button again. And this all culminated in 2003, which is the industry's Annus horribilis. It really was dreadful. Those of you around will remember. January, we had 2 pilots breathalyzed positively in Stockholm. Summer, I believe it was, we had a whole load of cabin crew also triggered in Helsinki. October, another pilot was famously triggered in Washington. And in December, yet another pilot positively breathalyzed in Oslo. This was caused mayhem. We saw a lot of managerial headless chicken reactions, and we had to work hard as an association to dampen down certain designers to do such dumb things as slapping the 24-hour ban drinking before flying, which would have just been completely counterproductive. What it did end up with was a change in legislation when we had the Railway and Transportation Act in 2003, which significantly upped the stakes of the game. And then followed a period which I call the fallow years. I say that because you would have expected there to be a lot of progress after what happened. And indeed, in 2005, BALPA held a peer intervention conference in this very building, and I was confident we'd actually move forward with some form of peer intervention, peer support program. But nothing happened. And trying to work out why is quite interesting. And in preparation for this, just a bit of thought, I reckon that it was the fact that the change in legislation put the big stick there. And managerial approach was very much, and actually one manager said to me, if we find out that a pilot's got an alcohol problem, we have to whip him off the line immediately and investigate. Well, of course, that's completely counterproductive for what you're trying to do in getting either self-referral or to refer one of your colleagues in for help. So that actually shrunk the incidents that we were seeing as an association. And equally, from a pilot's perspective, because the stakes have now been raised of 6 months in jail, £5,000 and loss of your job, etc., we all behaved ourselves. And nobody was drinking down, really, particularly in Scandinavia. So actually the number of disciplinaries that we saw tailed off. And it's as if the problem kind of went away. And the bit at the bottom there about the parallels, I'm just wondering whether there are any parallels with our current situation where we have a major traumatic industry event with lots of media progress. Lots of running around saying, what on earth do we do, what on earth do we do? But I'm just hoping that we don't have a fallow year period. I know Paul was saying he worries about this from a European perspective. Let's hope that's not the case. I don't think it will be the case for reasons I'm sure I'm hopefully going to demonstrate. It's also worth pointing out that at this stage, it's alcohol, it's not mental health, but that changed. October 2010, who says classical education is of no use? And Donna horribilis, those of you who remember your O-level Latin will know that that is a horrific month. In 1 month, we had a pilot who was a known alcoholic had to have control taken off him by 2 co-pilots after takeoff. We had a captain who was arrested and jailed for murdering his wife, and we had a long-haul co-pilot who gassed himself to death in his garage in 1 month. And it became clear at that point that this issue of peer support was much wider than alcohol and had to include mental health issues. So as a result, in March 2011, I produced the first version of the BALPA Welfare Intervention Programme. And it's nice to know from everything we've seen this morning, it uses this principle based on the BA assessment model, those of you familiar with it, of data recording. It used trusted individuals, trained ordinary line pilots, that BALPA, we would use the cachet, Paul mentioned this, that associations are trusted. So use that trust element to encourage pilots to report. We take the report, decide whether to intervene, and use ordinary trained line pilots to make those interventions. That programme took 3 years to develop as it worked its way through the cursus honorum, through BALPA, the Outside Med Group, Flight Safety Group. I did a lot of work with Monarch, took some trips to Toulouse, worked very positively with them, and through our FALPA work, I talked to people in America, Australia, and Europe to gather the best practices that we could and actually work through the programme. And we were actually making progress to the extent of February last year. We brought in the Samaritans, and we were training, had a day's training course for a group of, I call them dummy reps, dummy peer support guys who were flight safety reps and a couple of others. And that was a month before Germanwings, of course. The issue we were having, as it got higher up the food chain in BALPA, was where, instead of grown-ups at this point, the great and the good were looking at it in their overview role. Guys with tremendous experience like Rob Hunter, and saying, oh, hold on, there's a problem here. Because if BALPA are the data holders, then if we have information and we're sitting on it because we're waiting for further reports to confirm an issue, and there's an incident, we're on the hook. So the programme's sort of getting bogged down at this point. But then the world changed. And at this point, BA became very interested in peer support to promote mental health. I was on the email pretty much straight away to all of the safety directors saying, you have to look at this programme now, we have to talk, and to their immense credit, they did. We sat down as a group, and I brought this, albeit imperfect, programme to them. And for the record, I was never here, I never said this, but it was a piece of genius on the part of Flight Ops Management, of Charlie Maunder, who's Captain Charlie Maunder's number 2 in BA Flight Ops. He looked at this problem. And he said, well, why don't you take BALPA away from being the data controller? Why don't you bring in an independent healthcare provider to do that job? And that works on so many levels, because firstly, they take the risk of the data. They provide the clinical expertise as to when to intervene or not, because with BALPA we don't have that knowledge. And crucially, thirdly, it provides the firewalls between flight ops and also BALPA, because our only involvement will be sitting on the steering group over there at the top of the scheme to look for trends and training and stuff like that, which I will sit on. But that's our only involvement, other than if a member wants a representative. So it was a piece of, and I hesitate to use the word, as I say, because reps are not by law allowed to say nice things about managers, but it was a piece of genius, basically. We have agreed to terms of reference at the end of last year and started the process at the beginning of this year of recruiting our independent healthcare provider. I'm delighted to say that it is Professor Bohr who has selected to do the job. And he is going to run this whole programme. It will be independently run within the organisation, which is exactly as Paul was saying, it needs to be an independent run unit. That database will be Roberts and Roberts alone, hermetically sealed. Flight Ops Manager won't have access to it. We will not have access to it. The only data that hits the monitoring group at the top is anonymised for training purposes. And we are recruiting. We've had a very healthy response to our advertisement for peer support advisors. I'm slightly disappointed by the name now, having listened to what you're calling it in Virgin. It's typically Virgin, isn't it? You've gone for the Hollywood, you're calling them Guardians. And we're just peer support advisors for convenience there. Yeah. And I think Robert has very kindly said we've got some very high quality applicants, which is a piece of good news for us, that there are some quality people out there who can do this job. And we will hopefully, once we've selected them, train them up to launch in the summer. So before I hand over to Stephen to give the details on what this programme is, just a few points in conclusion then. Firstly, this, which I think are relevant to the conference here, this programme can't come soon enough, as far as I'm concerned. I have been running what is effectively a one-man peer support programme for a number of years now, which I listen to all these presentations thinking, what can I bring that's different here? And I suppose it's just real-life experience. But it is needed. It really, really is needed, this programme. I haven't met anybody who has said this is not a good idea. And for a BALPA initiative, that's pretty rare. The vast majority of footfall I've seen has not been alcohol related, it's been mental health related. And in terms of the number of cases that we've been dealing with, I had 6 on my books before Christmas, and I've had 3 in the last month. So that means, and this is just word of mouth, this isn't us advertising it, branding it, the big fanfare to say, support this one, it's a Flight Ops, it's BALPA joined, all the rest of it. Just through word of mouth, we're getting 1 case a month of people who are coming through. And their concerns, and this is the final bit of good news for the conference, is that to come back to why I don't think we'll have fallow years after this, was the attitudes of management is light years away from where it was 10 years ago. That getting this balance right between the zero tolerance approaches, you just mentioned here about the public's desire not to have looming pilot ahead of holiday jet issues, but also realising that you need support, you need to actually nurture. And we're talking about the line at the point in the operation before which it's a welfare issue, after which it's a disciplinary issue. These are good things. And secondly, I think the approach to the workforce has changed from 10 years ago. That all these 3 referrals I've had in the last year, just when you need another A380 course, were from concerned middlemen, a trainer in one case and a mate in the other, who through word of mouth knew about it and phoned me out to say, do you mind if this guy phoned you? And I think this approach, we have moved away, it talks about tectonic plates, we've moved away from grassing up your mate. And if you report them to management, or report them full stop, they're in trouble. We've moved away from that, and people are now much more likely to, and post-Gemma Wings, to have a concern, and if we give them an outlet to voice these concerns to, they will do so, and I can testify to that, because it works. And the other thing, our final point I would make is, so what can we pick up from, where's John about the Air Force? What can we pick up civilian-wise? And the thing that we get missed, I've done the mental health first aid in the training, and that's quite it's very active listening, and it's fabulous, and it's very empathetic and all the rest of it. But I come back to that point about pilots being pig-headed, stubborn whatevers. Challenging was the word that you used. And I've found, it goes against my nature as a union rep, but I've had to be, you have to be in this peer support role a challenger. Because they say, I'll be fine, just a good night's sleep and I'll be great. Really? All your trauma's going to go away after one night's sleep? Yeah, I'll just take them off the next trip and I'll be fine. Actually the strength to say to these guys, I hear what you're saying, but if you don't take yourself off the roster, I'm going to make a phone call and I'm going to take you off the roster. And I put the phone down thinking, I'm a bit harsh with this guy, but you know what? 100% of the time that I've taken this approach, they'll phone me back the day after and go, do you know what, yeah, you're right. And I take myself off the roster for the rest of the month. There's hope. This scheme works. It will work. And we're leading from the front. I'm delighted to say in British Airways. And it's a generic model that can be rolled out in any airline, in any sphere. And I'd hope that we can actually move it beyond British Airways. I'm very happy to take questions after Stephen's presentation. We'll go into some more detail of it. Thank you.